On Global TV News Express, President Tinubu extends Customs Controller General's tenure by 1 year. In business, federal government attracts over $700 million CNG investments in 2 months. On the foreign scene, fuel protests killed 22 in Angola amid mounting tensions. And in sports, Super Falcons parade WAFCON trophy through Lagos State. Hello and a very warm welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to News Express on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Uyi Agumofwegbe, reminding our viewers that we are on DSTV channels 365 and Star Times 276. President Bola Tinubu has approved a 1-year extension of the tenure of Controller General of Customs Bashir Adewale Adeniyi, allowing him to remain in office until August 2026. The extension, announced by Presidential Aide Bayo Onanuga, is aimed at enabling Adeniyi to consolidate key reforms, including the National Single Window Project and the AFCHA obligations. Adeniyi was initially appointed in acting capacity in June 2023 and confirmed in October of the same year. In a different development, President Bola Tinubu has appointed Professor Don Baridam and Pro-Chancellor and Professor Chinedu Umam as Vice-Chancellor of the newly established Federal University of Environment and Technology, Koroma Sakmonwa Ogone in Rivers State, along with other Governing Council members. The appointments, announced by a presidential spokesperson, Bayo Onanuga, include professionals from across Nigeria, such as Emmanuel Onoja, Hamid Adekunle, Professor Chima Oji, and Abdullahi Lamda, to ensure regional balance. The institution, signed into law in February this year, is scheduled to admit its first students in September, with key administrative roles also filled by experienced academics and administrators. Vice President Kashim Shettima has called on top officials from Food and Agriculture Organization, International Fund for Agricultural Development, and World Food Programme to assist in reviving the Lake Chad region and boosting year-round agriculture. The Vice President made the call during bilateral meetings at the United Nations Food Systems Summit in Ethiopia. He highlighted the region's vast agricultural potential and linked it to national food security and the Green Revolution project championed by the Tinubu administration. Food and Agriculture Organization Director General Kudungu commended Nigeria's political will and pledged stronger partnership and technical support to accelerate agricultural transformation in the country. And back home, the House of Representatives has begun deliberations on a controversial bill proposing to move the Nigeria Safety Investigation Bureau, NSIB, from the Ministry of Aviation to the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. While the proposal aims to enhance independence and coordination across the transport sector, it has sparked sharp division among stakeholders. National Assembly correspondent Aniyetie Patrick now reports.
At a public hearing in Abuja, the atmosphere was tense as aviation stakeholders clashed over a bill seeking to reposition the Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau under the presidency.
While it may have the political support, but it will be lacking in technical activities. This indeed may dilute, the word is may dilute its domain-specific responsiveness. It will impede knowledge sharing and weaken the functional alignment with sector-specific agencies.
However, not everyone agreed. Representatives from the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and the Ministry of Special Duties backed the move, saying it will strengthen institutional independence and ensure broader oversight.
The Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation is a neutral, coordinating body, not involved in sector-specific operations. Domiciling NSIB under OSGF safeguards its objectivity free from potential conflict of interest.
Sponsor of the bill, Honorable Isiaq Akinlade, argued that the current structure under the Aviation Ministry hinders the Bureau's effectiveness, citing institutional bottlenecks and overlapping mandates with agencies like the Federal Road Safety Commission and the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency.
This limitation undermines the Bureau's ability to fulfill its mandate due to institutional bottlenecks, lack of independence, and fragmented interagency coordinations across Nigeria's transport regulatory ecosystem.
Speaker of the House of Representatives, represented by Honorable Kwamoti Larry, welcomed the debate, describing the amendments as a step towards aligning Nigeria with international transport safety standards. Annie T. Patrick, Global Television News.
Away from Anyete's report now to Ondo State, where the Court of Appeals sitting in Akure, the state capital, has affirmed the election of Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa of the All Progressives Congress APC as the duly elected governor of the state. The appellate court dismissed petitions filed by the People's Democratic Party (PDP) candidate Agbola Ajayi and others, citing lack of merit and reiterating earlier tribunal and Supreme Court rulings that upheld Aiyedatiwa's victory. Governor Aiyedatiwa had won the November 16, 2024 governorship election with 366,000 votes, defeating his rivals across all 18 local government areas of the state. The interim spokesperson of the African Democratic Congress, Bolaji Abdullahi, says Peter Obi remains a member of the Labour Party but has joined the ADC-led opposition coalition working towards the 2027 election. Speaking during a television program, Abdullahi revealed that Obi was granted time to conclude his political obligations in the Labour Party before formally crossing over. He said the alliance, which Obi joined in early July, is a strategic step to build a stronger alternative political force in the country. The National Orientation Agency, NOA, has called on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to have full responsibility for voter education to it as part of efforts to improve electoral participation in Nigeria. Director General of the agency, Lanre Issa Onilu, made the appeal during a courtesy visit to the Commission's chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, in Abuja. Anyeche Patrick tells us more.
As Nigeria continues to battle voter apathy, the National Orientation Agency is pushing to take full charge of voter education across the country. The agency's Director General lamented the persistent low voter turnout in elections, including the recent Lagos State Council polls, which he said recorded only 6% participation. Issa Onilu said voter education is part of the National Orientation Agency's core mandate, but regretted that the agency lacks a dedicated budget for democracy education and is rarely acknowledged for its efforts.
We are here to seek collaboration to ensure that we prepare well for the coming off-season elections, and importantly for the general election that is almost here, and there's a lot to do. Considering the knowledge gap.
INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, on his part, acknowledged the National Orientation Agency's strategic grassroots presence and emphasized the need for collaboration, describing election management as a multi-agency responsibility. Professor Yakubu praised the National Orientation Agency's recent initiatives like the NOA Content Factory, which uses television, radio, and newsletters to engage citizens, particularly young people, locally and abroad.
I would like us to explore further areas of partnership through our voter education and publicity and other relevant departments, particularly with the recent creation by the Commission of an Artificial Intelligence Division under our ICT department.
Both agencies say they will continue to explore stronger partnership opportunities ahead of the Anambra governorship election. Annie T. Patrick, Global Television News.
We appreciate your reporting, Anyeche. The Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria has announced the extension of the deadline for the submission of entries for the 2024 Nigeria Broadcasting Awards. A statement issued by the Secretary, the Nigeria Broadcasting Awards Steering Committee, Usman Umar Bello, says entries will now close on August 30, 2025 for the awards scheduled to hold in October 2025. He further explained that the extension of the deadline follows numerous reports of technical difficulties experienced in submitting entries to meet the earlier deadline of July 31, 2025. The Nigeria Broadcasting Awards serves as a prestigious platform to recognize and accelerate excellence in the Nigerian broadcasting industry. The awards are in 12 categories across radio and television production and are open exclusively to member stations of the organizations. Nurses under the National Association of Nigeria Nurses and Midwives have begun a 7-day warning strike across federal hospitals, leaving patients unattended and healthcare services disrupted across the nation. The association's president, Morakinyo Rewan, stated that the industrial action follows the expiration of a 15-day ultimatum over poor pay, unsafe conditions, staff shortages, and unpaid allowances. In Abuja's area councils and across several government hospitals, patients were seen waiting endlessly in corridors and reception areas without nurses in sight. That evidently paints a very pathetic picture. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, and the Ministry of Education have agreed to introduce mandatory drug tests for students in tertiary institutions and advise secondary school curricula to include comprehensive drug education. This decision was announced after a meeting in Abuja between the agency's chairman, Brigadier General Buba Murwa, retired, and Education Minister Dr. Maruf Alausa, who both expressed concern over the link between drug abuse and rising insecurity. Marwa noted that the agency has arrested over 40,000 suspects, secured more than 8,000 convictions, and seized drugs worth over 1 trillion naira in 2 years with support from President Bola Tinubu's administration. Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia has dissolved the State Executive Council and named former Commissioner for Justice Moses Ataga as his new Chief of Staff. According to a statement by his Chief Press Secretary, Tesu Kula, the decision was made during the 12th meeting of the council held in Makurdi, the state capital. The governor thanked outgoing commissioners for their service, urging those not reappointed to continue contributing to the All Progressives Congress and Benue's development. The National Assembly is renewing efforts to boost women's participation in politics through the Reserved Seat for Women Bill, a proposed legislation aimed at closing Nigeria's gender gap in governance. National Assembly correspondent Aniete Patrick was there for Global Television.
Despite making up nearly half of Nigerians' population, women remain significantly underrepresented in politics. 14 state houses of assembly currently have no female members at all. The bill seeks to address this imbalance by creating 1 additional seat for women in both the Senate and the House of Representatives in all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. It also proposes 3 reserved seats for women in each state assembly, totaling 182 seats nationwide. Both chairpersons of the House and the Senate Committees on Women Affairs, Honorable Kafilat Ogbara and Senator Ireti Kingigbe, say increased female representation will drive development and tackle poverty more effectively.
By increasing women's representation, we can ensure that their perspectives, their views, needs, rights are adequately addressed in policy formulation and implementation.
So I advocate and call on all the women of this country to please go out, speak to the men, speak to everybody you can speak to get their support for these 74 reserved seats.
The United Nations Development Programme and other advocates, including former lawmaker Benila, are also lending their voices to the push, urging grassroots mobilization to ensure the bill passes.
Women currently occupy fewer than 5% of seats in the National Assembly. This isn't just a gap, it is a call to action. A call to dismantle structural barriers, disrupt the status quo, and build a more inclusive and just governance.
If passed, the bill could make a major turning point in Nigeria's political landscape, giving women a stronger voice in decision-making across all levels of government. Annie T. Patrick, Global Television News.
Oh, thank you, Aniete. Akora State High Court has sentenced Abdulrahman Bello to death by hanging for the brutal murder of Hafso Lawal, a final year student of the College of Education in Ilorin. Justice Hannah Ajayi described the act as, quote, cruel and wicked, unquote, noting that evidence confirmed the murder was for ritual purposes. 4 co-defendants were acquitted due to lack of complicity. You're watching the live broadcast of News Express here on Global Television. When the rest of the broadcast returns, fuel protests killed 22 in Angola amid mounting tensions. Details coming, plus business and sports stories on the other side of this break. We urge you to stay with us. Thank you so very much for staying with us here on News Express. The second part of this broadcast now returns with business, where the federal government has attracted over $791.49 million in private sector investment into Nigeria's compressed natural gas (CNG) ecosystem between May and June this year, covering infrastructure, logistics, and conversion kits. President of CNG Initiative also said a total of $980 million mobilized in 12 months, over 100,000 CNG kits deployed, and 1,440 vehicle conversions across 20 states, alongside the procurement of 807 CNG buses, as well as over 5,000 tricycles. Plans, he says, are underway to convert 1 million vehicles and train 25,000 autogas technicians by 2027, with officials saying the surge in investment stems from renewed policy direction and Nigeria's urgent need to leverage its natural gas reserves amid massive petrol subsidy costs. The federal government says debts in Nigeria's 19 northern states dropped by 42.06% from 1.98 billion naira to 1.14 trillion naira due to President Tinubu's economic reforms. Minister of Budget and Economic Planning Abubakar Bagudu announced the figures during a citizens' engagement session in Kaduna State, noting that the Renewed Hope agenda is improving state-level fiscal capacity. He also said that nationwide national debts declined by 33.4% to 3.8 trillion naira. Sounds like a piece of good news there. But let's turn to the foreign scene now, where British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that the United Kingdom will formally recognize the state of Palestine in September unless Israel takes various substantive steps, including agreeing to a ceasefire in Gaza. In a televised Downing Street address, Starmer said the United Kingdom will recognize a Palestinian state if Israel has not taken the steps demanded by the time the United Nations General Assembly is held in September. Some Israelis have shared their views following the announcement.
So if the international community can get together and say you need a two-state solution, which I've been fighting for, demonstrating for 30 years now, I believe this is the right answer. I don't know how much it'll affect this government, but once it happens and there's enough pressure internationally, I hope it does affect this government or the next.
I think it's very sad because they don't understand the situation. We surviving. We didn't want this war, and the Palestine doesn't want peace. That's the problem.
All right, let's turn to other stories now. A South Korean court has issued a new arrest warrant for former President Yoon Suk Yeol over his refusal to appear for questioning in an ongoing insurrection and election tampering investigation. Yoon, previously detained for attempting to subvert civilian rule and sending troops to parliament in 2023, now faces renewed legal action alongside his wife. Prosecutors also alleged involvement in unrelated corruption cases involving gifts from a religious group. At least 22 people, including a police officer, have died and over 1,200 arrested in Angola following violent protests triggered by a sharp rise in fuel prices, with medics in Luanda overwhelmed by casualties and warning that the real toll may be higher. The unrest, which started as a taxi strike, quickly escalated into widespread looting and vandalism across Luanda, Huambo, Benguela and Huila, prompting a government emergency response and assurances of national stability. Officials blame infiltrators for escalating the violence, while protesters condemned the fuel subsidy cuts that have sharply raised transportation costs in the oil-rich but economically strained country. And now some excitement by way of consolation from the world of sports. The Super Falcons have staged a jubilant victory parade through Lagos State after clinching their 10th WAFCON title. Crowds of fans lined the route from Costain to Echo Hotel, celebrating the team's continental triumph. The team had recently been honored by President Tinubu with national awards and monetary gifts. Away from football, Nigeria's D Tigers will face Cameroon in the quarterfinals of the 2025 Women's Afrobasket in Abidjan on Thursday. Head coach Rena Wakama urged her players to elevate their performance, noting both teams remain unbeaten. She emphasized that this stage marks what she calls the business end of the tournament and called for focus on set objectives. Emmanuel Macron and Michael and Adesua Osaboye have emerged champions at the 46th CBN Senior Tennis Championship held at the MKO Abiola Stadium in Abuja, thrilling fans with intense performances in the men's and women's singles finals. Michael defeated Prosper Okonkwo 7-5, 2-6, 6-3, while Osaboye rallied past Motayo Blessing 3-6, 5-1, 6-4 to claim their respective titles. Representing the CBN Deputy Governor, Hakama Ali reaffirmed the bank's decades-long commitment to youth development and national unity through sports. Those obviously were sterling performances and outcomes, no doubt. As we end Global TV News Express now, here is a look at some of our big stories. President Bola Tinubu has approved a one-year extension of the tenure of Controller General of Customs, Bashir Adewale Adeniyi, allowing him to remain in office until August of next year. In business, the federal government says it has attracted over $791.49 million in private sector investment into Nigeria's compressed natural gas (CNG) ecosystem between May and June 2025, covering infrastructure, logistics, and conversion kits. On the foreign scene, at least 22 people, including a police officer, have died and over 1,200 arrested in Angola following violent protests triggered by a sharp rise in fuel prices, with medics in Luanda overwhelmed by casualties, warning that the real toll may be higher. And finally, in sport, we told you the Super Falcons have staged a jubilant victory parade through Lagos State after clinching their 10th WAFCON title. And that's your Global TV News Express. A quick reminder that we are on DSTV channels 365 and Star Times 276. We urge you, as always, to kindly follow us across all social media platforms now showing on your screen, including our Global TV NG. I am Uyi Agumofwegbe, thanking you so very much for watching. I will see you soon.